The NFL draft graders out there must be getting a little soft because I've never seen so many A grades in my life. Or maybe they just learned people click on the articles when they think their team did well. And I agree, several teams probably did very well. I think the Raiders, the Giants, the Bears, the Packers, the Cardinals all had great drafts. But today, I'm narrowing a list down to 5 teams that I think changed their destiny in this draft.
The pick of destiny.
Not just who had the best draft, but who got players to take them to the Super Bowl. Or to tank them. Friday, I uploaded the biggest winners and losers of the NFL draft, as I do every year. That video just focuses on the first round. This is an accumulation of all the rounds for the teams that I like, so we'll focus on the Destiny Changers. Destiny's Child. Damn, I don't know any Destiny Child songs. That's good. Sports! All right, 3 teams that I thought had tremendous drafts were the Seahawks, the Buccaneers, and the Patriots. But I do not think any of those teams really have a QB where it matters. And I love Geno. I love the Geno story. I'm not a bitter Broncos fan. And as solid as he is, he did not lift the team when they needed him the most. Maybe a healthy backfield and a better defense will change that for Geno. Mac Jones, I believe, will bounce back in 2023, but will still be the 4th best quarterback in the AFC East. And the Buccaneers may have had the best draft of these 3 teams, but they're looking at the Patriots and the Seahawks QB situation with envy right now. I'm sorry, Baker, but I have seen enough. So my first team of destiny is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers quite possibly won the draft in terms of who the draft scouts love. After taking tackle Broderick Jones in the first round, the Steelers used their Chase Claypool pick on maybe the most obvious pick in NFL history and selected Joey Porter Jr. Last year, they took a quarterback from Pitt, so it's fair to say sentimentality is one of their biggest considerations in team building. But also, Porter is one of the top corners in this class. They didn't reach for him, and he should feast in a secondary that has TJ Watt forcing opposing QBs to do dumb things.
Apply the pressure.
And football is family. Well, that's what the NFL wants us to believe. But football is certainly family in Pittsburgh, where they employ more family members than Hollywood does for the Baldwins. They have defensive lineman Cam Hayward and fullback tight end Connor Hayward, newly drafted outside linebacker Nick Herbig, and offensive lineman Nate Herbig. If Derek Watt comes back, then you've got the Watt brothers, all in the family here. They are so lucky they drafted Ben Roethlisberger instead of Phillip Rivers. Or they'd be fucked.
No contraception.
Now, Pittsburgh finally addressed their offensive line in an aggressive way, adding who could be the best tackle from the draft in Broderick Jones. Plus, the beast tight end from Georgia in Darnell Washington, who is considered the best blocking tight end in this draft, a huge target for Kenny Pickett, who should also have more time to throw with this extra protection. And I think Najee Harris will have better running lanes, which means he can up his average of yards per carry from 1 to possibly 3. Nick Herbig was the best player available on several draft boards when they took him in the 4th, and he joins Watt and Alex Highsmith to give that unit tremendous depth at the edge. They took a corner in the 7th round in Corey Trice, who may have fallen because of some injury issues, but this is a guy who has a really high ceiling if he's healthy. The Steelers were 29th in touchdown passes allowed last season, a big reason, along with their limitations on offense, that they weren't playing in the postseason. Plus, defensive interior Keanu Benton should be a day 1 starter at nose. The Steelers needed to improve the line of scrimmage, and I think they did that on both sides. Look, I'm not sold on Kenny Pickett yet. He feels solid to me, but solid in the same way Trevor Siemian did. It also feels like this weird, rare situation where he is simply a game manager, and the Steelers are the right team for that, a dark horse playoff team that nobody will want to face next year. They have the least gifted quarterback in their division, but this feels like the kind of unsexy draft that will pay dividends for this team for several years to come. Then, Destiny Team 2, the Lions, one of the most heavily criticized teams in the first round of the draft. The Detroit Lions put a ball gag in the haters' mouths by getting tremendous value in the second with their 3 selections. Now, Detroit was mocked for using pick number 12 on Alabama running back Jahmyr Gibbs, and then later in the first round selecting Iowa backer Jack Campbell at number 18. The consensus is these are 2 very good players who may have just been available later in the draft. We get worked up when guys might be available. And that's what happens with instant draft grades, right? We overreact to alleged value, a made-up quantity placed on players by people most of us think we trust, but we can't really be certain are experts. What the Lions did, though, was hilarious because they draft tight end Sam Laporta at number 34. Detroit then traded picks 48 and 159 to the Packers to move up to number 45 and select Alabama safety Brian Branch.
We traded with the Lions?
Branch was the only safety in this class that many had a first-round grade on, and even though many liked Notre Dame tight end Michael Mayer as the best tight end in this class who was available, Laporta feels like a better fit with the Lions. If you just shuffle around those picks, suddenly the Lions go from the biggest reachers to finding great value, so it balanced out. Now, they traded TJ Hawkinson last season and got great production from Brock Wright and Shane Zylstra in the red zone. Those 2 tied for the second most receiving touchdowns on the team with 4 apiece. And nobody knew who the fuck they were. Laporta is going to be a fantasy gem and walk away with 8 touchdowns next season. The Denver Broncos were praised for drafting linebacker Drew Sanders, where they did in the 3rd round. Detroit took the one guy many had ranked above Sanders at linebacker in the 1st. So after day 2 concluded, you can argue the Lions got the best linebacker in the draft, which is also a position they really needed help at. And then safety Brian Branch at pick 45 was one of the biggest steals of the 2nd round and also helps them shore up the worst secondary from 2022. Branch is nice because of his versatility. He played all over the secondary, and not just like as a free safety and a strong safety, he also lined up as a nickel corner and linebacker sometimes. Considering Detroit sucked in all of those areas, his ability to cover just someone, any fucking someone in the passing game, is a massive upgrade. Then the Lions spent a 3rd round pick on Hendon Hooker, quarterback from Tennessee. I saw someone say that he'll be a great veteran mentor to Jared Goff. Hilarious. He's not that old. He's only 3 years younger than Goff, though, and Goff is about to enter year 8 of his NFL career. There's no pressure on Hooker to start right away. It's not really a big deal if this pick doesn't work out for Detroit either. It's a low-risk swing on a guy who could have a lot of upside, a guy who many thought would have went in the 1st round had he not torn his ACL last season. And people are taking the Lions seriously for the first time in a long time. The Jared Goff trade is looking really good for them. The Goffense is real, and I think Detroit helped themselves quite a bit on defense. If their D is simply average, they have a real shot to win the NFC North, and unlike Pittsburgh, I think they have their QB in Jared Goff. Those are 2 positives. What about negatives? The 49ers didn't have any picks until their comp picks kicked in at the end of the 3rd round. They had 3 of the final 4 picks and took a kicker. Jake Moody was a big reason Michigan was so good last year, and it makes a lot of sense given that Robbie Gould is so old and he's the last remaining player from the 2006 Bears team that made it to Super Bowl 41. Also, he refused to go back to San Francisco. The fact that the Niners had so many picks in the 3rd and the following rounds but did not move into the 2nd to get a corner or a receiver or hell, a running back, a need or another playmaker for Kyle Shanahan to play with, they are one of the very few teams that I think lost in this draft. Just lost. I'm pissed that they didn't take K-State running back Deuce Vaughn anywhere. They let the Cowboys do that, and I honestly believe Deuce will be the reason the Cowboys actually bounce the 49ers in the wild card round this next season. This draft seems poised to bite San Francisco in the ass, a smart team that didn't do shit in the draft, all with a 3rd overall pick currently listed as QB number 3 on their roster. Back to positive destiny. The Bengals. It's always nice when the draft gurus gush over your first day 2 pick, and many believe the Bengals got an absolute steal picking at number 60 and selecting Michigan corner DJ Turner. They added another DJ in the 7th at corner and DJ Ivy, whose DJ name is just way better. Forget how confusing it will be for announcers talking about their defense now with DJ Reader, DJ Turner, BJ Hill, and DJ Ivy. The Bengals added a starting caliber corner who is physical and can play inside or outside and is one of the fastest corners in this draft. Cincy lost 2 very good safeties this offseason, but helped fill that void with Jordan Battle out of Alabama. Bengals fans are high on Dax Hill, so the safety spot feels pretty solid again. Running back Chase Brown could be huge, especially if Joe Mixon's sister keeps trying to shoot teenage boys, allegedly. The Bengals received either A's or B+ grades for all of their picks. At the back end of the first, they drafted edge rusher Myles Murphy, who many believed would be gone by the time they selected him. He was mostly considered the 3rd best edge player in this draft, but the Draft Network had him ranked ahead of Tyree Wilson, who went 8th overall to the Raiders. Murphy was very consistent in terms of production in college, and adding him in the mix with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard could give the Bengals the best pass rush in the AFC. And then I'm going to sneak Buffalo in here. Like Cincy, you are so close to getting over the edge, Buffalo. And I just want to talk about one guy you selected. One man who can make a huge impact for Josh Allen, and that's Florida guard O'Cyrus Torrence. He's a great player, and you nabbed him in the 2nd round. If he's as good as the scouts say, your questionable O-line should get much better. A massive win for Josh Allen. Buffalo or Cincy will beat the Chiefs in the playoffs this season. And that's why you changed your destiny. Then I've got the Colts. Destiny either for better or for worse. Bryce Young will be good in Carolina. CJ Stroud should be good in Houston. And as much as we all liked what the Texans did at the top of the draft, the Colts took a big swing, taking Anthony Richardson at 4, and an even bigger swing letting Jim Irsay run his own Twitter account. After Richardson, though, they had a very good draft, which they desperately needed to do. Now, Young and Stroud were essentially safe picks, okay? But I believe they'll make the Panthers and Texans competitive by 2024, if not immediately, since both divisions are up for grabs. I think their bust potential is less than Richardson, which is why if he fails, he changes this team's fortunes for the negative. But if he's great, and I think he will be, the Colts are suddenly not just a good team, but a fun team to watch for the first time since Andrew Luck was there. And yes, the first question they ask every college player now is, do you plan on suddenly retiring for no reason? Now, whether it is for better or worse, I don't think a single quarterback will have a bigger effect on the organization from this draft than Richardson for the Colts. Indy had 12 picks, added a much-needed receiver in Josh Downs, who hopefully gets Colts fans ups when he makes contested catches. Tackle Blake Freeland was a much-needed add and should open up holes bigger than Frank Reich and Carson Wentz's love for Jesus for Jonathan Taylor. And if he looks like he did in 2021, Richardson is going to have an easy transition into the NFL and may also have 1,000 rushing yards behind that line. The most exciting ad might be Adetomiwa Adebaware, who inexplicably fell to them in the 4th. He's got a ton of boom potential for the Colts defense as well. And finally, the Eagles.
Speak of destiny.
The Eagles were basically 2 plays away from changing their destiny and winning the Super Bowl. And then they go out and they draft out of Georgia so heavily that the Bulldogs may become the first college team to be awarded Super Bowl rings if Philly wins. A team this good has no business making a pick in the top 10. It really feels like the Eagles were cheating in the draft. We're not used to seeing top 10 players go to Super Bowl contenders, so it feels like their impact will be much more significant than when those same picks go to struggling teams who desperately need their help to be saved. I think we will see more of this as teams are more and more willing to deal picks for players every offseason or during the season. Now, I covered their first round in that video I already mentioned. Not going to rehash how great the Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith picks are, but those 2 alone would be enough to make them Super Bowl favorites. They took liquid IV for the last 60 days and will not have the Super Bowl hangover. After those picks, they got offensive tackle Tyler Steen out of Alabama, safety Sidney Brown, and then make a huge steal in the fourth, going corner, yes, Georgia again, Keely Ringo at 105, quarterback Tanner McKee, defensive interior Morrow, Jamo. The Eagles line is the best in football. But it's getting a little older, so adding a piece like Steen in the third is smart. Ringo or Brown can help with the loss of C.J. Gardner-Johnson. The Eagles lost 2 Gardners, and yet their lawn's never looked better. But here's what I love about Philly. Deals are never out of the question. Miles Sanders left for Carolina, and after the Lions drafted Gibbs, we all knew DeAndre Swift was on the trading block. In swoops old Howie Roseman to get Swift and a 7th round pick, while dealing just a 4th round pick and a 7th round pick. When Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown went down, the Lions offense stalled. If Swift stays healthy, which is the big if, he makes the Eagles' rushing and short passing attack much better than it was last year. I love Miles Sanders, but Swift is just a more dynamic player. And after Roger Goodell admitted that the NFL is scripted,
when the NFL scriptwriters and
I foresee a Super Bowl rematch between Philly and Kansas City, where Jason gets the win and Travis is arrested mid-game for public intoxication.
Get your hand off my penis!
Like it or hate it, those are the teams I think changed their destiny in the draft. Deal with it. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports. Please subscribe here on YouTube. Don't forget to check out my winners and losers of the draft and my Broncos draft recap if that tickles your butthole.